Alrighty then. So, yesterday we talked about the weaponization of memes, and the things that make memes so insidious is they don't have authors oftentimes that we can trace stuff back to, and they spread so quickly, right? The idea is if there's less attributed to them, they can be from and for anybody, right? They're kind of the shifting sands of the interwebs. So today I kind of wanted to talk a little bit briefly, but I didn't want to make it all lecture. I wanted it to be more of a discussion. Based on the things that we have learned, the things that you just know from experience, what things make people more vulnerable to disinformation? And I'm actually going to start, you know what? No, I'm not. I'm going to have you start because I think that you might cover it before I even do. And inquiry-based learning is great. Okay, so, and let's not just talk about age, right? There are people who are savvy with information who are 80. And there are people who are savvy with information who are 15, right? This isn't an age-based thing. This is an intelligence or a cognitive-based thing. The internet would have us believe that, but I don't like that. I think it's ableist and ageist. So no, it has nothing to do necessarily just with cognitive ability or just with age. But what things make people more likely to fall for disinformation?
Like how they were raised, kind of, but also like the environment, like rural communities versus cities and stuff like that.
Oh, I like that. You say humor involved? Like if they're funny, they're...
I'm pretty sure that's what I do.
All right. What other things are more likely to make people vulnerable to disinformation?
Probably like current events that are happening. Like if the election's close, you know, we see a lot of stuff about politics and stuff.
Super good. Yeah. And even if the media is fact-checking something, sometimes, right, I would say part of our problem is not reading the whole thing or going with just a headline or just a line of a story or using context, right? Like people not using context is one way that I think disinformation gets spread. So for example, if I'm standing in front of the class and I say, when I was pregnant with Jonas, and the only thing that someone in the back heard, I was pregnant. They're like, hey, Mrs. Dawson's pregnant again. I'm like, no, but I'm not though. No, thanks, two's good. Context is key. Context is essential, right? For our conversations as well as information. What about if famous or public figures give us disinformation, and many of them do, it's harder to disbelieve, right? Because we have people who are in positions of authority, people who should know what they're talking about. And if they spread disinformation, we don't always notice it right away, right? Because we trust them, at least to a degree. Okay. What other things might make people more vulnerable to disinformation? Things that aren't well marked as satire. Honestly, just being in a hurry, wouldn't you agree? Making you vulnerable to disinformation is just like moving quickly through things. Like when we scroll fast. We don't stop and do that kind of thing, right? So the time it takes to actually look at something is often longer than we want to spend on any given site or piece of reading as well. I mean, that's in our nature. I know it's in mine. Anything else that might make us more vulnerable to disinformation?
Like when it's like really like sad stuff, like it plays with people's emotions.
Oh, that is so good. Yes. If it,
People are just like are more likely to believe it. It's
It manipulates your emotions.
yeah.
where? Sure can. Better. All right. I really like that one a lot. What if it has one very clear, like if it's also mixed with real information, right? Like if disinformation, but there is real information within the same article, within the same meme, within the same something else, right? So part of it is true. That's the stuff that I think is probably the most difficult. Trying to think if we've covered anything else. Some of you have brought up something without actually naming it, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a definition for it. Okay. And that phrase is echo chamber. Is anyone familiar with echo chamber? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about algorithms. It's kind of boring. So if we're on Google and we search things, right? The things that we search the most are the things that come up, correct? So if we are searching conspiracy theories, that kind of thing, even if we're trying to debunk them, that information hits us first, right? On social media, if I didn't know this until recently, but the angry react and the sad react makes Facebook think that you don't want to see as many of those kinds of posts. And so it actually buries them further down in your newsfeed, even if you wanted to read it, even if you wanted to react to it. So like Facebook's algorithms are set to help keep you happy in what you're reading. The things that you read the most, those are the things that they give to you. If you block someone or snooze someone, what's going to happen is your bubble of information is going to decrease and decrease to what Facebook thinks you want to see, right? So that echo chamber is when you are surrounded by, what's the word? I had to type first because it was in my head. Surrounded by your own confirmation bias. So the things you see are the things you already think, right? It's set up to do that, right?
You know that like when you like Googling something, like what you type, like depending on your location is what it gives you as like the top search results and stuff.
I didn't know it was location based. That's interesting. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, that's pretty smart AI, isn't it? Like that's pretty impressive. But what happens when we get inside our echo chambers is it's a lot harder to fact check. If it confirms our own biases, then we're unlikely to look more closely at it, and that makes disinformation more difficult to combat. I think if we're already prone to want to believe it, right, we are more likely to believe it. So all of these things make people more vulnerable to disinformation, make disinformation easier to spread, either on purpose or by accident. We said on purpose is the trolls and the bots, and by accident are just your normal everyday people dealing with these particular aspects. So we are almost ready to actually start writing this paper. We've been gathering information for a really long time about disinformation. So what we're going to do now is I want you to do some thinking and exploring on your own. I want you to find articles about disinformation. I want you to find sites that talk about fake news and how to identify it, right? I want you to look into other possibilities for fact-checking websites. I want you to think about what can we do as informed citizens to make sure the stuff that we encounter is as accurate as we can get it, right? And I'll be the first one to say, everything is making an argument. Nothing is unbiased. However, things can be verified by multiple sources, right? We can use that and understand that. We can look at original context and speeches, right? And knowing that is just going to make us more savvy, media literate citizens. So yeah, I will save this, hopefully as a PDF. There we go. And we're going to start doing a little research on our own. We're going to actually pull together, now that we've expanded the definitions of disinformation, we're going to make another like web tomorrow of the things that we've discovered, the words that we associate with it. And then we can begin to outline.